I never thought my worst nightmare would come true. My name is Melissa. I'm 26, and honestly, I've always believed I could read people better than they could read themselves, especially those I called friends. Amber and I were inseparable. She knew all my secrets, saw me at my lowest, when I cried over guys, lost jobs, or lay sick in bed with no strength to get up. She was always there, or at least I thought she was. I met Jason, my boyfriend, at a party 2 years ago. He was 3 years older than me, confident, smart, the kind of guy girls lose their minds over. But he chose me. And like an idiot, I believed we were meant to be. We often hung out as a trio, me, Jason, and Amber. I even joked that she was our third. Will, because they always clicked so easily. She laughed at his jokes, and I was happy my best friend and my boyfriend got along so well. It felt perfect. The first red flags appeared when Jason started disappearing more often. He blamed work, and Amber would sometimes say, "Oh, I saw him at the cafe today." He looked exhausted. I didn't suspect a thing. I thought she was just being caring. Only later did I realize how perfectly calculated it all was. One night, I decided to surprise Jason, bring him coffee and pastries to work. But when I arrived, I saw his car parked outside a motel, and next to it, Amber's red car. My heart stopped. I didn't want to believe it, but my legs carried me closer. The window was slightly open, and I heard her laugh. The same laugh that filled my kitchen the night before. Then, his voice, and a sound I will never forget. I stood there like a ghost until everything inside me broke. I wanted to scream, but instead I just walked away, silently. No drama, no tears. Not yet. I don't remember how I got home that night. Everything felt blurry, like I was walking through fog. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I placed the coffee and pastries on the kitchen table and just sat there, silent, empty. Then I looked at my phone, 10 missed calls from Jason. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, a text popped up. "Baby, it's not what you think." I almost laughed. Not what I think? Really? I saw his car. I saw hers. I heard their voices. But still, I didn't reply. I just deleted the chat. I didn't want to hear a single word from either of them. The next day, Amber came to my door. She actually had the nerve to knock like nothing had happened. I looked at her through the peephole, and I could feel hatred rising inside me, so pure, it scared me. She was holding coffee from the same cafe we used to go to every Friday. "Mel, I can't explain," she started when I opened the door. "Go ahead," I said coldly. "Explain what I saw." She stayed silent, then started crying. Tears, her favorite weapon. She always knew how to play the victim, but this time it didn't work. "It just happened," she whispered. "We were drunk. I didn't mean to." I laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh. "You didn't mean to? But you still did it. With my boyfriend? Amber. The man I told you everything about, even the things no one else knew." She tried to touch me, but I stepped back. "Leave and don't come back." She walked away quietly without looking back. But I knew it wasn't over, because that's when the thought hit me for the first time. They both need to feel what I felt. The idea began to take root. I woke up with it. I fell asleep with it. Revenge. Not loud, not messy, calm, cold, intelligent. I decided not to throw a public scene. I'd seen how scenes work in movies, screaming, tears, dramatic breakups. But that only gives temporary satisfaction. I wanted every step they took to echo with pain, subtle, slow, like drilling through ice. I started watching, like a predator waiting. I knew their routines. Jason's morning coffee at the corner shop. Lunches at the office. Nights he works late. Amber her early runs, Monday yoga, evening meets with friends. I learned their habits like a chemical formula. I began with small strikes. I started with imagined things, shifts in communication. I sent Jason messages from my number disguised as a promo. Free tickets to a club night. He replied thanks as usual. Then another message. You won. 2 spots. Bring someone you want. I knew he would answer. He did, and they both chuckled privately. Not suspecting the trap born from my boredom and pain, then Amber. I created an account under the name Sophie Garrett, a simple name. A simple mask. I sent her casual notes. Hey, I see you by the park a lot. Would you want coffee? Like a girl trying to make a new running buddy? She answered fast, eager. She liked the attention. I watched her start to wait for my messages. Every next word was a needle pushing deeper. I didn't break their stuff. There was no point. Revenge isn't about destroying property. It's about destroying trust, letting their inner lives splinter. I planted tiny doubts where none existed. Did he really text you? Are you sure she said that? Are you sure you saw everything, right? I sowed seeds of small fears that would grow on their own. And the most important part? I changed. Not immediately, but slowly. I used to be the person who believed in honesty and spoke straight. Now I lived behind a mask. I learned to smile out loud while a fire raged inside me. And the dangerous part, I began to enjoy the control. It made me feel powerful, but with power came a coldness, empty, sharp, like a blade. One night, I saw them both at a bar I'd never been to. They were sitting close, laughing, leaning into each other like they owned the world. My chest tightened, but I walked up calmly. Instead of making a scene, I sat at another table and ordered a cocktail. I watched them like they were strangers and folded all my emotions under. Revenge was no longer just a tool. It had become my food. And I knew when the time came, the end would be clean and brutal. The first fruits of my plan appeared slowly, like cracks in an old mirror, barely noticeable from afar. But up close you could see the fracture had begun. Jason grew nervous. He started being late to meetings, forgetting details, answering tersely. We used to talk for hours about nothing. Now his replies were like truncated lines of code. Dry, cold. I played carefree. I answered with jokes, but at night I wrote down every little thing in a notebook, times. Messages. Words. I needed to gather evidence to make the revenge not only painful but flawless. Amber changed in another way. She became clingy, calls in the middle of the night, heart-filled texts, theater tickets just because. In public, she laughed and acted like everything was fine. Behind closed doors, her voice grew needy, as if she constantly needed confirmation she was the center of attention. I watched her eyes search for compliments in every look. Vulnerability made her malleable. And malleability is the best material for manipulation. One evening, Jason had a fight with a colleague over something small, triggered by a thread of messages I'd nudged subtly. He came home with the same tension in his shoulders. People show when their trust is broken. I sat in the kitchen pretending to read, but with only cold calculation behind my eyes. You okay? He asked, voice shaking. Yeah, I said, just tired. He sat next to me and hugged me. I felt hands that were once my warmth now trembling with betrayal. In that moment, I knew revenge was already gnawing at them from the inside. I didn't touch his phone that night. No need. My job wasn't to fling the shards in their faces right away. It was to let suspicion fester between them. Meanwhile, I nudged others gently. Mutual friends, acquaintances, even the barista at the cafe. So someone would accidentally see them together in the wrong place. One friend who sometimes exchanged gossip with me casually said, I saw Amber laughing with some guy by the stage last night. They looked close. The message moved into circulation and repeated a few times. Doubt began to erode their usual confidence. But with every move, I grew tired. Revenge demanded energy. Friends began to notice I was different, laughing less, listening more, disappearing for days. What scared me most wasn't what they'd done, but who I was becoming. The cold in my chest grew, and I learned to distance myself from it, as if I were an instrument. One morning on a run through the park, I bumped into them both by chance sitting on a bench. Silent, hands not touching, eyes turning away from one another. It was the first real crack in their bubble. They saw me and frowned. Amber nodded. Jason stood up quickly and walked the other way. I passed by feeling a strange relief and an emptiness. My revenge was working. But was it worth losing myself forever? The question whispered at night. What if after all this they break? But I end up with nothing. A month had passed since the night I first saw them together. I should have felt relief. The plan was working. They were drifting apart, fighting. But the deeper I sank into my game, the more hollow I felt. My days used to be filled with people, plans, dreams. Now, just observation, notes, manipulation. Revenge had become routine, like a job. But I couldn't stop. One evening, a message from Amber appeared. Mel, please, can we talk? I can't take this anymore. I didn't reply right away. I just sat in the dark, staring at the screen. There was no lie in her words. This time, I felt genuine despair. And for the first time in months, I was curious. What broke her? Later, I found out she and Jason had a fight. A big one. He accused her of lying. She accused him of not trusting her. My game was working perfectly. I even knew the cause, the fake emails I'd sent from a dummy account. They looked like messages from Jason to another woman. Imagining her finding those emails gave me a rush I'd never felt before. But it didn't last. The next day, Amber showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. Mel, she whispered. I messed everything up. I lost everything. Really? I raised an eyebrow. And what? You thought I'd feel sorry for you? She sobbed and sank to the floor right there. I made a mistake. A big one. But he started it. I laughed, short, cold. You both started it. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw real guilt. Not the kind you wear for show, the kind that lives in the eyes. And it scared me because deep down, I felt something close to pity. I shut the door in her face, but her words echoed in my head for hours. That night, I dreamed. I was standing at the same motel window looking inside. But instead of them, I saw myself. Laughing, touching, betraying. And on the other side, me again, watching, crying. When I woke up, I realized I'd already become the person I hated. But it was too late. The next day, another message. This time from Jason. We need to talk. Everything's getting out of control. I knew. The moment of truth was near. And though I should have been afraid, I felt only calm. Because when everything finally falls apart, there's only silence left. And silence is also an ending. We agreed to meet at the same cafe where it all started. It's strange how places hold memory, the smell of coffee, the clinking of cups. Even the music felt the same, only I wasn't. When Jason walked in, I recognized him instantly, though he'd changed. His face was thinner, eyes red from sleepless nights. He looked like a man who'd lost everything, and maybe he had. Mel, he said, sitting across from me. You have no idea what's happening. I stared in silence, waiting. Amber, she's losing it. She thinks I'm cheating. I didn't know who's behind it, but everything's falling apart. I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring the moment. And you want me to help you? I asked coldly. He looked at me, confused, like a child who'd lost his favorite toy. I just want things to go back to how they were, he said. I made a mistake, Mel, a big one. But I loved you. Maybe I still do? The words hit like a stone in water, dull and heavy. I expected anger or pain, but there was nothing. Just emptiness. Love doesn't cheat, Jason, I whispered. It doesn't go to a motel when someone's breaking. He looked down, silent. You didn't come here just to apologize, I said. What do you really want? He met my eyes finally. I want you to stop. I know it's you. My fingers clenched around the cup so tightly I almost shattered it. I don't know what you're talking about, I said evenly. Don't lie. The emails, the fake accounts, the rumors. She's falling apart. That's what you wanted, right? For us to suffer. I smiled. And you thought betrayal comes without consequences? He held my gaze for the first time in months. I deserve what you did to me. But she doesn't. She's just broken. And lost. I laughed softly without joy. We're all broken, Jason. Some of us just break others to feel whole. We sat in silence. Around us, people laughed, drank coffee, lived their lives. Between us, only silence and unfinished sins. He sighed and said, "If you don't stop, this is going to end badly. For all of us." I watched him stand and leave. His shadow slid across the table like the closing line of a story I'd written myself. And that's when I felt fear. Not for him, not for her. For me. Because when you live too long in the dark, the light starts to hurt. After that meeting, I couldn't sleep for days. Jason's words haunted me. This will end badly. For all of us. I replayed them over and over like a broken record. And the more I thought about it, the less I knew who was really in control anymore. People started looking at me differently. My coworker Sarah once said, "You've changed, Mel. Your eyes looked darker." I laughed it off. But inside, everything was humming. One evening, I came home and found an unmarked envelope taped to my door. Inside were printed copies of my fake messages, the ones I'd written to turn Jason and Amber against each other. Every false page, every sentence, my words. At the bottom, a note. "I know what you did, and now it's your turn to lose." I froze. Someone had started playing my own game against me. The next day, a friend who lived near Amber called. "Mel." Her voice trembled. "Amber's in the hospital." I didn't understand at first. "What?" "She took pills. They say she couldn't handle the stress." My hands went cold. The world shrank to one sound, my breathing. I hung up and just sat on the floor, numb. I went to the hospital later that night. I didn't know why. Maybe to see if she was alive. Maybe to face what I'd done. Her room was on the 4th floor. Through the window, I saw her shadow. Still, pale, hooked up to machines. I didn't go in. I just stood in the hallway, gripping the wall. And for the first time in a long while, I cried. Not from pain, from fear. I came home at 3 in the morning. The apartment was dark, but I knew I wasn't alone. My heart started pounding. "Who's there?" I whispered. A familiar voice came from the dark. "I told you this would end badly." Jason sat on the couch. His face was tired, but his eyes full of rage. "She could have died, Mel. Are you happy now?" His voice shook. "Your games, your revenge, this is what it led to." I started, but he cut me off. "You destroyed all of us." I wanted to scream that he started it, that he betrayed me first. But the words stuck, because for the first time, I saw how far I'd gone. He left, slamming the door, and I stayed, surrounded by silence so thick it felt alive. And in that silence, I realized the control I thought I had was never really mine. 3 days had passed since Jason left my apartment. 3 days of silence. No calls, no texts. Even the world seemed to stop breathing around me. I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion, that things would pass. But deep down I knew they wouldn't. This was the beginning of the end. On Thursday, the hospital called. The nurse's voice was professional, but tense. "Miss Melissa Reynolds? Patient Amber Watson is asking for you. She's awake." I didn't respond right away. My heart pounded. She wants to see me? After everything? I went the next morning. The room was almost empty. Just a white table, a heartbeat monitor, and her. She looked frail, eyes sunken, but smiled when she saw me. "You came," she whispered. "I didn't think you would." "Neither did I said. We sat in silence. Only the steady beep of the monitor filled the room. "You know," she said softly, "I saw dreams while I was between here and there. And in every one you were beside me. Not as an enemy, but as a part of me." I stared at her, lost for words. "I never wanted it to go this far," I whispered. "But you betrayed me, Amber." She nodded. "I know, and every day I regret it. But you went further." Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. "You made monsters of us all, Mel. We all burned in it." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but nothing came out, because somewhere deep down she was right. "I didn't know it would go that far," I said quietly. "I just wanted you to feel what I felt." "And did you?" she asked. I said nothing. "Because I did," she continued. "Pain? guilt. But now, I'm letting it go." She smiled, and for the first time in months, I saw not an enemy, but a human being. When I left the hospital, the sunlight stung my eyes. I stood on the sidewalk, unsure where to go. For the first time in months, I felt no anger, just exhaustion. I decided to leave town. Not forever, just far enough. I turned off my phone, packed a small bag, and took a bus north. The road was long, like a silent confession. I stared out the window, thinking how it all began. One betrayal, one decision, and an entire life undone. And the scariest part was realizing I no longer knew who I was without revenge. When the bus stopped in a small seaside town, I stepped out and inhaled the salt air. The ocean was calm, peaceful, and for the first time in ages, silence felt not like punishment, but like a chance. But fate never forgets unpaid debts. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You can't run from what you did." I saw everything, and that's when I knew the story wasn't over yet. Those words from the message wouldn't leave my head. I saw everything. Who could it be? Jason, one of our friends? Or just a cruel joke? I tried not to think about it, but fear crept back, quiet, sticky, the kind I hadn't felt since that night at the motel. A week passed. The small seaside town had its own strange calm. People smiled at each other, the wind swayed the palms, the waves crashed against the rocks. Everything felt unreal, like I was living inside someone else's movie. I rented a small room above an old cafe and helped the owner clean tables, just to keep my hands busy. At night, I listened to the ocean. It had something hypnotic, cleansing, and just when I began to feel a flicker of peace, he appeared. Jason. I saw him through the cafe window, standing by the road in the same black jacket he'd worn the last time I saw him. When he walked in, the air in the room changed. "Took you long enough to find me?" I asked. "Not long," he said. "I knew you wouldn't go far." He looked different, not angry, not broken, just empty. "Why are you here?" I asked. "To finish this," he said. "She's dead, Mel." My body went cold. What? What did you say? Amber. She couldn't take it. Yesterday. Her heart stopped. He spoke evenly, like he was reading someone else's words, but his eyes, lifeless. I sat down trembling. My ears rang, my heart pounding somewhere in my throat. "This is your fault," he whispered. "It all started with you." "No." I shook my head. "You both destroyed me." He stepped closer, his voice lower, almost a whisper. "Maybe, but now we are all destroyed." He placed his phone on the table. On the screen, a photo. Me and him before all this. Smiling. Happy. "Remember that?" he asked. I didn't answer. "You wanted us to feel pain. Now you have it. Just a different kind. The kind that doesn't go away." He left without looking back. I sat there for a long time before realizing I was crying. Not quietly, not gracefully, but violently. Like something inside me was being torn apart. Outside, the sea roared like a voice repeating endlessly, "You can't run!" Later, they found Jason's body on the cliffs outside town. The police called it an accident, but I knew he'd gone there on purpose. And then I understood. Revenge always comes back. Always. I stood on the shore, staring at the dark water, swallowing the waves like stolen memories. And somewhere in the ocean's endless murmur, I whispered for the first time, "Forgive me." But even the sea stayed silent. After Jason's death, time stopped meaning anything. Days blurred into nights, and the ocean became my only companion. People in the town looked at me with quiet concern, but no one asked questions. Maybe they saw something broken in me, something better left untouched. Every morning I walked down to the shore where the waves hit the rocks, thinking about them both. How different everything could have been. If I'd just walked away. If I hadn't wanted them to hurt. If I'd chosen forgiveness instead of fire. But I didn't, and fire leaves nothing behind but ash. One evening, I found his phone in the old drawer by the bed, the one he'd left at the cafe. On the screen blinked a message I hadn't opened before. I don't want this to be the end, but maybe it has to be. I'm sorry for everything, Mel. I read it again and again until I realized it wasn't an excuse, it was a goodbye. And maybe I could have stopped him, but I didn't. The next morning, I packed my things, left a short note for the cafe owner. Thank you for everything. I have to go back. I didn't know where exactly back was. I just knew I had to face the place where it all began. The motel. When I arrived, it was abandoned. Windows boarded up, a crooked for sale sign. Inside smelled of dust and dampness. I walked to the same window where I'd once stood, watching them, and there I saw myself. Not the woman I'd become, the girl I used to be. Smiling, naive, still believing in people. She looked at me through the glass. I reached out and the window crumbled into dust. Tears came on their own. Not for them, for her. The girl who only wanted to be loved. Who didn't know that love could turn into a weapon? Outside, the sky was gray, the ocean loud in the distance. I took out my phone and opened drafts. Inside, everything. The messages, the fake accounts, the proof of every manipulation. All of it. With one tap, I deleted it all. Enough. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Maybe redemption isn't about forgetting, but accepting. Not running, but standing still with the truth. I walked toward the ocean, barefoot, the cold water biting at my skin. Each step felt lighter. Each wave washed something away. When the water reached my chest, I closed my eyes. I forgive you, Amber. And you, Jason. And most of all, myself. And this time, the sea answered with a gentle whisper, like breathing.